Hello, everyone. I'm Pete Smith, and today I will be sharing with you the story of David and Goliath from the Old Testament of the Bible. Long ago, in the town of Bethlehem, there lived a boy named David. He was a shepherd. He was also a very talented and handsome young man. He was a talented musician as well, but it wasn't what was on the outside. It was really what was on the inside of David that made him stood out, made him so special. He always had God with him on the inside, and he knew that God was always watching over him. So when David would go tend to his sheep, he would bring his harp, because that was the musician that he specialized at, and he would play for the sheep to calm them down, and it would make his days go by faster. And nearby Bethlehem, there lived a king, King Saul. He was the king of the Israelites. But he was a very unhappy man because one day earlier he had displeased God, and it just made him generally a very sad person day by day. It just never got better. So he felt that there was something that he could do about it. So he sent one of his servants out to find maybe somebody that could cheer him up, some entertainment, a musician. So sure enough, they brought back David, who played the harp really well, almost like angelic, the sounds that could come out of his harp. I mean, if he could calm sheep down, he could obviously cheer up a human. So that's what David did. He came and he played for the king, and the king really enjoyed it, and it did cheer him up. And through that, they kind of built a relationship, and David came more and more, and that's how they just continued to build a relationship and build back up Saul's confidence, and it also gave Saul confidence in David as a person. Meanwhile, David's brothers were fighting in the war between the Israelites and the Philistines. So they were in Saul's army of the Israelites. So David was sent to bring them food when they were at camp or at battle. David would go bring them food if he was not shepherding or playing the harp for the king. So that day when David was nearing camp with the food for his brothers, he went down to the battlefield and he heard a startling voice, and it said, "Today I dare the army of Israel. Give me a man to fight. If he should win, we are your servants, and if I win, you are our servants." And so this frightened the soldiers very much so. Not to mention the fact that this man named Goliath stood 9 feet tall, was just an absolute giant, absolute freakish stature. To put that in perspective, he stood his head would be at the ceiling of this room, which is about 9 feet tall. Just absurd height. So obviously everyone was very frightened. They were trembling. They were honestly shaking. Because who wouldn't be in that situation, except for David, who stood up before everyone and said, "I will fight this giant Goliath myself," because he knew what was at stake, and he knew that he had God with him, and it just gave him tremendous confidence. But obviously, people mocked David, thinking that it was just a joke. Like, why would this little boy fight the giant? How would this be our best option? And his brothers literally told David to be quiet and go home. But David was not backing down. He even went to the king to tell him that he wanted to fight this giant. He told King Saul, "Don't be afraid. I will go and fight the Philistines because God is with me." And Saul responded, "You are just a boy. You are a shepherd. Goliath has been a warrior since he was a child." But then David convinced Saul by telling him a few of the times that he had killed off bears and lions when they were attacking his sheep. So if he can do that, why can't he do this? And this is what convinced King Saul. He said, Go, my boy, and God be with you." And Saul even offered some of the best army that he had for the Israelites. He gave him army for his whole body, brass armor, and but David was too small for that. It was just too heavy. He said he couldn't even walk with it. It just weighed him down. So he took it off, and David had a plan to defeat this giant. He went to the stream. He went to the nearby flowing stream that was so peaceful, where he had been many times, to kind of reflect, because he was a very wise young boy, and he went there to get his ammo, which were five stones that he could put in his sling. While sitting by the stream, he reflected, and he visioned himself beating Goliath, and he prayed. He prayed to God to just keep him safe. So there he goes with his 5 stones in his sling, and ready to go take down the giant. And he had tremendous confidence. And so they get to the battlefield, and there Goliath stood. He marched his huge body forward, and he said, and he literally thought the whole thing was a joke. He had a little boy getting ready to fight this 9-foot giant. He said, is someone playing a joke on me? Am I a dog that you come to me with sticks? Yelled the angry man. Come to me, and I will feed you to the birds and the beasts. And David answered Goliath confidently, you come at me with a sword and a spear, and I come at you with the name of God, who protects all of us and all of my army. This very day I will strike you down. Everyone will know that there is a God in Israel, and that God does not save by spear or sword. This angered the giant to the point where he charged David, and the battle began between the two. He ran at David to attack him with his sword and spear, and his army that was literally blinding. That's how the sun blinded off his helmet, shined off his helmet, off his body armor, and it was just a crazy sight to see. But David, almost unbothered, pulled out his sling, pulled out his bag of stones, put him in his sling, and he began to swing him around. And as David got very close to him, he slung one of his first stone straight into the forehead of Goliath, and the giant fell down. It almost looked like slow motion the way he fell. He fell, and it almost felt like the whole world shook and trembled when he hit the ground that hard. And it was the biggest upset in the history of the world so far. And David went over to the dead giant, grabbed his sword, put his foot on his chest, and all the Israelites celebrated and cheered, and were just so thankful, and it was just amazing. David then went back to Saul's tent, and that later, David was appointed to lead the army, and then he was also appointed to be the king of Israel after Saul had passed. And that just really shows that with God all things are possible, and to always have faith.